thousands of years, humankind has been communicating with art and the written word. Ink has been developed and used in every corner of the planet to help communicate. And today on Max Magazine, we take a look at some of the many uses of ink. Hi, I'm Brad Grass, your host for Max Magazine, and a very fun edition today because, well, we're here at the Leader Post to check out the modern process of a very old practice, printing newspapers. You know, writing was an age-old practice. Only the very learned were able to have access to anything written because only a few could afford it. And then at about 1460 AD, along came a very bright young fellow by the name of Johann Gutenberg. This is the guy that invented the printing press. And when that happened, it became available to everybody. In fact, printing presses are still used this very day, albeit they've changed a bit since then. In fact, the one that we get to check out today is in this very building. Now, if you want to get a true sense of how a wonderful newspaper like the Leader Post is put together, we should go to the source. So I introduce you to publisher Marty Klein. Marty, thanks for letting us be here today.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Glad you're here.
No, me too. This is so cool because we get a behind the scenes look. If you really want to know what's going on locally here in your city, you're just a newspaper away. But you guys do so much more than be on top of local content. You do a lot in the community, for the community too.
Yeah, we certainly do, Brad. In many ways, I like to think we define the community. We set the influence of many discussions, and we actually influence those discussions as well. In terms of being involved in the community, we very much are immersed into it. We probably fund and sponsor over 300 events or charitable organizations over the course of 1 year, and we're very much involved in setting a stage for democracy.
Well, that stands to reason too. This is a big year. This is a birthday year. What year is this?
This is we're celebrating our 130th year, and I think it was March 1st, 1883 was our first edition out of here.
Yeah. So what would you say then, Marty, would be some of the biggest advancements in the newspaper industry in the last 2 decades? Say?
Well, the last 2 decades, it's the last 2 years has been bad, but the last 2 decades, it's been phenomenal the way the newspaper industry has transformed itself. But the thing is, it continues to transform itself. This is a continuous, almost a seemingly endless transformation of this industry. Big advancements are the way the newspapers are put together.
Wow, and a lot of that old school ways were done right here in this very building.
They very much were.
Yeah.
We just celebrated an individual who retired, and he was a copy boy back then, and he did a lot of those things
really?
Back many years, 42 years ago, he just retired.
A lot of history here. In fact, some of the old ways are still hung on to. There's a local group right here in Regina called Articulate Ink, and they've actually got an old printing press that they use for some of their artistic projects. Check it out.
Articulate Ink was founded in 2010. At the time, 3 of us were taking fine art courses in printmaking, and we realized that there was no printmaking studio in Saskatchewan at all. The nearest one to us was in Winnipeg.
I specialize in screen printing. It's my favorite medium. It's actually the first process that we started here in the studio. We were fortunate to come across a set of secondhand equipment. We make t-shirts for bands, posters, things like that.
Printmaking itself has been around for centuries, but there's up-to-date silkscreen UV technology that you can use digital technology working from images on the computer and then print them out using all handmade techniques. It's a hybrid between digital and antique methods.
We use a different type of ink for every process. For letterpress, we use a rubber-based ink, really juicy and vibrant.
A lot of older printmakers ended up with a lot of neurological problems because of the bar sol and the varnish and just horrible stuff, really flammable, stinky, awful stuff. Unfortunately, there's a couple of places where those things are still necessary, but the sort of things that we use here, we use oil and vinegar to clean up. We use a product called Beanie Dew that's actually made from beans to clean out our screens. So as much as possible, we try and use cleaning materials that are not going to be harmful.
One of our members, Michelle, was touring the Artful Dodger kind of before it became the Artful Dodger. They were touring the basement, and it was really dark and kind of stinky, scary old basement. They had kind of flashlights and were wandering around. Went into this room and said, "Oh my God, there's a printing press." There was this big Chandler and Price letterpress from 1919, really beautiful machine. With the help of this man named Bill Morris, actually, we've been able to find all of the parts that it needs to run, and he helped us motorize it, so it's ready to go, and we've used it for a few commissions already. Once we got it running and sort of saw what it was capable of, we very quickly came up with some rules, safety rules especially. If it's running, you don't want to go near the flywheel that's spinning really fast. You always want to be printing in pairs in case something happens. This thing could eat you, your entire body. The quality of printing, too, you can't get off of some of our smaller letterpresses that we have here. It's just a different ballpark altogether.
A lot of people want to come into the studio while we're doing our actual commissions for them, and they're just absolutely mesmerized by the processes to see it go from digital image that they worked through with us to on a screen to on their t-shirt or on a CD case or whatever it is. So people have really responded to that handmade sort of feel, just the way that we did when we originally got started with printmaking.
People really dig what we're doing. So many images you see now are on screens or are digital images, so for people to see something hand printed, it's really special, and it has a different quality to it that you can't find very often anymore.
Here we are in the heart of the Leader Post, more or less, right? There's so much that goes into the making of this beautiful newspaper. So here to help us address some of that is Nicole Petrosor, who is the what's the proper title?
Print Products Manager.
Print Products Manager of the Leader Post. So there's a lot to your job. Now, first off, you've been with the newspaper for how long now?
Just over 9 years.
Yeah, but you've been the Print Products Manager for...
About a year and a half now.
Okay, and you address a lot of interesting issues because, like I said, there's so much that goes into this. There's the marketing, there's the branding, there's all the ads, sending people out on stories. All this eventually has to come together, right?
That's right. There's so many different pieces to the newspaper to make this daily miracle happen.
Mm-hmm. And changes. You guys are constantly adapting, all right? Always changing, always moving forward the newspaper to keep up with the pace of today.
Exactly. We've got to meet the readers' needs and the advertisers' needs. So we're constantly evaluating and assessing our products and making the changes we need to make sure that they're what the readers want.
And they do it really, really well. But eventually you have to take all these concepts, the art, the marketing, the stories. Eventually you have to take all of that and put it into a physical process. And that's where Rod comes in. Rod Pasula, come on in here, sir. Now, Rod, you are the production...
Team lead.
Team lead, okay, for the Leader Post, which means that you physically put all of this together.
Correct.
Okay, now how is that done? How do you put all of that into a physical entity?
Well, basically, what happens here, if you want to check out the monitor, what starts is a clean slate. This will be an open page. What you're seeing on there is editorial content, which is placed by our editorial department. And then the bottom part of the page where you see the red boxes, those are sold ads. So once editorial has placed the stories onto the page and everything is approved, this page gets released to Calgary. When it goes to Calgary, that is where the page is, for lack of a better term, stitched together. So what will happen is the ads will appear in the page, and then from there it moves over to a process called Output Manager. Now you see the editorial content, and we can view what were once the red boxes are now the advertising.
This reminds me of back in the day when they used to actually have like the physical letters, and they would put them all in place and make a template.
Correct. Yep.
Right? But now you do it digitally.
Now it's all done digitally. The whole paper used to be made up in this whole department where one person would build the ads, another person would strip the stories onto the page, and now it's all done digitally and much more efficiently.
But and the old school way, the original way, I mean, it used to be done like that right here in this very room.
Absolutely.
Eventually, all of this goes to the big machine to make the plates.
Correct. This whole set of machinery back here, comprising about 6 different pieces of machine, is called the plate line. From the start to the end, a plate will be generated, which then is sent up to the press room, and the press put on the press.
Oh man, there's so much that's involved to putting together the beautiful Leader Post. All of that creativity, the stories, the artwork, the marketing, all to ink, all to the printed page. But sometimes there are businesses that have to do a very similar thing, put all their concepts, their artwork to ink in a much more personal, confined space. What I'm referring to is a tattoo parlor in Saskatoon called Rites of Passage, and they do great work. Check it out.
My dad had tattoos my whole life. 8 years old, he came home with a new tattoo on his arm. I was quite excited about that. When I was a little bit older, early teens, I found out that family members had drawn designs for tattoo shops. I started doing that when I was in high school, busing down to seedier neighborhoods in town to sell tattoo designs. And then when I was 18, I got a job, part-time volunteer job, answering phones in a local tattoo shop. And one thing led to another, and yeah, that was 20 years ago. When I first started out tattooing, it was still like a marginal society thing. You kind of had the fringes, like the extremes in music, rocker kind of guys, motorcycle kind of guys, outlaw kind of guys. And then over the last, probably since, 96, I definitely have seen a difference. I think one of the biggest factors was it hitting television. When the television shows came on and became popular with popular culture, I really believe that our client base widened. I believe there's a lot of power to the tattoo, especially when you consider tribal societies called it a rite of passage to enter the war party, to enter the hunting party. So it was sort of like an ordeal that you would have to go through in order to be accepted into adulthood, to prove yourself, to transition from becoming a man from a boy. Before my grandmother passed away, my brother did a tattoo on her 82nd birthday. So that was pretty interesting. She got a Scottish thistle. Oh, we do a lot of fixing up misfit tattoos. We do a lot of scar cover, like whether I've had women that got C-section scars covered up. I recently had a young lady who had a preventative double mastectomy. So I did lotus flowers with smoke over her breast scars. So yeah, we cover up old tattoos. We cover up misfit tattoos. We also do scar tissue cover.
My mom was the first person I showed after I got that piece, and all tears. Who's gonna marry me now, Jolie?
See, that's a really interesting cultural thing in that most women worry about how it's going to look in their wedding dress or who's going to marry them. Most guys worry about how are they going to get a job.
Yeah.
Will I get a job in the future? Who's going to marry me?
Well,
Will I be able to earn a living?
It was you who made me worried about a job. I wanted my neck tattooed right across the front, Pat's like, no. No, you're never gonna get a job if you get that for a first tattoo.
Yeah, just looking out for you.
Well,
We have an open air concept is what it's called, where there aren't walls dividing us. If we need a divider, we have movable dividers for privacy. But otherwise, there's a lot of banter between the artists and clients. Sometimes clients talk to different artists. It's a good environment. It keeps things entertaining as opposed to being in a private room with somebody that you don't know for 2 hours. This way you're in an open room with like 4 or 5 different people. The front desk people are a very important part of the business. They're the face. When people come in, oftentimes the tattoo artists themselves are busy working because they're busy artists. The people that are in the front are really the people that are the face of the business. When you enter the door, the art and the attitude you get from the people up front should reflect the studio itself.
A lot of people come in with like several ideas and they don't really know what direction they want to go in. So what we do is we really try to hone in what they're trying to tell us, because sometimes they want us to kind of guess what's in their mind and it's impossible. Everybody sees things differently. So we do ask that they bring in artwork and we'll go through that with them.
All of my tattoos are symbols of something that I've gone through in my life. Actually, this one started out as I bought a house and I was selling my house and didn't want to leave my flower garden behind.
Well, I try to guide as much as I can. Like if I see something I'm like, oh, that's sick, Graham would kill it, awesome. I'll try to push them in that direction. Otherwise, we do just ask them to look through the portfolios. The more prepared you are, the better outcome you're going to get. Then you're going to end up with an awesome tattoo that you're going to be really happy with.
Well, technically, a person can get tattooed anytime they want, but in our shop, we don't tattoo any minors. We don't tattoo anybody under 18, even with parental consent. I don't really think it's a good idea. I like to tell people it's not my job to make someone the coolest kid in grade 11.
So now we've gotten as far as the plates. The plates are now ready for the paper to be processed, to be made. So now we're going to get into the actual physical making of the paper. And this is so cool. This is why I have this handsome gentleman standing next to me. This is Bill Ruddy, who is the print and distribution manager of the Leader Post. So Bill, thanks for letting us in here. You've been doing this for how long now?
11 years.
11 years.
Yes, sir.
Okay, managing this great big machine behind us. This is the machine that actually makes the paper.
This is the press that prints all the Leader Post products.
What's that called?
It's a Goss Metro press.
It's big.
It's very big. It's 3 stories high.
For a layman like me, Bill, what is the process of the physical making of the paper?
Okay. So you saw the plate making process.
Yep.
Okay. So when the plates come up to the press room, the plates are taken and then mounted to the cylinders. Each plate will have its own position on a cylinder. Okay, and then the plate is designed to accept a fountain solution and an ink mixture. And the fountain solution is designed to keep the non-image area of the plate clean, and it allows the imaged area that we want to print to accept the ink. And that ink is then transferred from the plate to a blanket, a rubber blanket, and then from the blanket it's transferred to the paper. The folder will then take it and fold it, cut it off, and out comes a completed paper.
And those dials, those big dials that we see, they line up the images. So if we ever get a newspaper where it's just, and it's rare, Bill, but if we ever get a newspaper that's a little blurry, then
somebody's not paying attention.
Asleep at the dial.
Exactly.
It's an amazing machine and such a cool process. And I wish, what you can't appreciate right now is the smell. I love the smell of the paper and the ink. It reminds me of my dad grew up in the Maritimes, and he would eat fish and chips out of a rolled up newspaper. That was his favorite thing to do. And actually, there's a guy in Saskatoon, Nick Semenoff is his name. You might have heard of this guy. He prints as well in Saskatoon, but he's developed a non-toxic ink. He's perfected it since the 80s, and he uses it in his printing process. Check it out.
You can do certain things in printmaking that you can't do in painting. You can have multiples, and each one is considered an original. And so instead of having a very expensive painting to sell, you can sell prints at a much lower price. You could just do more, I feel. You can add photographic images, and I've learned how to recycle plates. Plates I hear now cost about $40 a piece for students. I can recycle one for 40 cents. And so my prints have 10 colors, 20 colors, and the only thing I'm really spending is a lot of time, not a lot of money. Well, traditional lithography works with the principle that water and oil don't mix. So an image is put on with a greasy material, and then gum, which is water-based, mixed with a little bit of acids, is put on, and it makes the background reject the ink. So these chemicals that you're using are slightly toxic and causing problems. And printmakers now realize that there's a lot of toxic materials in their art materials. I've discovered that you can take ordinary caulking silicon from a hardware store. You don't have to buy anything special, and just you dilute it with odorless paint thinner, which is toxic but not very, very toxic, and you don't really end up using very much. And you can put your image on with a number of different methods. You could use the grease if you want to, and that's a double step thing, but you can use just the toner from your laser printer, and that produces a reticulation that can be removed and manipulated anyway until you're happy with it, and then you sort of set the toner. And then you put this diluted silicon and buff it down to a very, very fine film. In fact, I feel it looks like just like lace, that there is basically openings in this film. And then if you put the image on with water-based materials, you use water, it goes through the kind of the lace holes and washes out the image and takes off the silicon wherever the image exists. And this is always a worry that lithographers have when they wash out the image, it just disappears. At first you very much panic until you learn that is normal. And then the ink, the molecule, is quite a long molecule, and it can't get down except where there's a large opening. So it basically rejects the ink over all the plate, even though there's holes there, but the ink can't get in except where there's a big enough opening. And so I just started working. And then when I started really being around the department, the toxic chemicals, the hydrocarbons, it's really, really bad. And I knew that, you know, from the internet and everything, you realize that people were dying. Well, hydrocarbons like asphaltum, you use a lot of that stuff. You use nitric acid, you use all kinds of stuff like that. And one of my friends in the United States died of cancer a few years because he had worked as a lithographer for many years, you know. He had accumulated all these chemicals over the years as a printmaker. So basically, I think a lot of printmakers are aware of it, but it's the decision of what do they have to relearn, what they have to buy and, you know, change. And it really turns out the relearning is the most important thing. It's slightly different. In fact, doing a Google search on acceptance of new technologies, it seems that maybe 15% take it at the beginning, and it takes about 3 generations before the complete turnover to the new processes. It was sort of like success brings more success. Even though I love painting, because I was getting success as I developed new processes and safer and easier processes and getting sort of international notoriety, And the internet is a wonderful thing. If it wasn't for the internet, there's no way anybody realized somebody is doing something new in Saskatoon, you know.
And so that's it. That's the incredible process of how a wonderful paper like the Leader Post is put together. And you touched on this before, Marty, how far the newspaper industry has come. And you're always evolving because we're in a constant state of change in today's world. And you guys are right there with it. What are some of the ways that you guys are advancing as a newspaper?
Well, there's a number of ways. And I just want to add, you mentioned constant change. I'm going to pick up the word constant. The one constant thing is the editorial, the salespeople, the production people, the distribution people are putting this thing out 303 days a year, and they haven't missed a day in 130 years.
Wow.
So that's pretty awesome. So kudos out to them. What we've been doing in terms of that whole change front is, while the newspaper may not have a growing future as we know it or have seen it, our footprint has never been bigger, and that's because we have cross-consumption or consumption across platforms, including print, the tablet, mobile, and also the desktop. And so in terms of reaching audiences, our footprint's never been bigger.
I can speak to that. I've got my password. I'm a subscriber. I've got my favorite thing to do on a Saturday morning is to pick up my iPad, type in my password, and boom, the paper's right there.
There you have it.
Yeah,
just a phone call away.
Love it, love it. So yeah, just a smartphone away, really. It's any tablet, any device, the Leader Post is never far out of your reach. So Marty, thanks so much once again, and happy birthday, 130 years and going strong.
Looking great.
Love it. And thank you for joining us on another edition of Max Magazine.
If you have program ideas that you'd like to see on Local On Demand, write us at max.local@sastel.com. Max Local programming is now available online at maxonline.sastel.com.